To explain how a chemical reaction occurs, we're going to use collision theory. And as with all theories, this is an explanation for what we think is happening. In the case of collision theory, we're trying to explain what happens to molecules when they react with each other. Let's have a look at an example. Let's take a box with two molecules. And let's consider the two forms of energy that these molecules, we'll assume they're in a gaseous state, possess. Firstly, because they have bonds, we're going to consider potential energy. And secondly, because these molecules are moving around inside my box, they also have kinetic energy. Because both molecules contain bonds, we would consider them to be stable and therefore in total have a fairly low potential energy. And because in this example they are in a gaseous state, we would expect those molecules to be moving around in my box quickly and therefore have a high kinetic energy. Now let's imagine these molecules are moving towards each other and are going to collide. When they collide, the kinetic energy that they had can be transferred into potential energy in order to break the bonds in each molecule. If the molecules have enough kinetic energy to transfer into potential energy and break the bonds in those molecules, they can now reform bonds and rearrange themselves to form the products from this chemical reaction. And as soon as they start forming bonds, the potential energy decreases and therefore the kinetic energy will increase again. These new molecules will now continue moving around in my box. Of course, the potential energy in my products will be different to potential energy in my reactants. So in order to conserve energy overall, we might expect to see some energy released or absorbed to or from the surroundings, as described in the energetics basics videos. There are two small caveats we also need to be aware of regarding these chemical reactions. The first is that if my molecules don't have enough kinetic energy to break the bonds when they collide, they will simply bounce off each other and no reaction will occur. The minimum kinetic energy that they have is known as the activation energy, and without that amount of kinetic energy, no reaction will occur. The second is that my molecules must be in the correct orientation in order for a reaction to occur. Let's take, for example, an orientation like this. Let's now summarize the key points from this video. Firstly, the explanation for how chemical reactions occur is described by collision theory. And collision theory states that for a successful reaction to occur, there are two criteria. Firstly, my particles must have sufficient kinetic energy to break the bonds in a collision. This is known as the activation energy. And secondly, particles must collide with the correct orientation. If both of these criteria are met, we have a successful collision, meaning that a reaction will occur. Hopefully, this video was of some help.